No one expected this to happen this fast. Not from a company most people outside the industry barely talk about, and definitely not at this price. Because when Chery revealed a fully loaded hybrid SUV for around $16,500, it didn't just raise eyebrows. It quietly triggered a question the entire car market isn't ready to answer yet. How do you build something that looks premium, drives like the future, and still costs less than a basic SUV? At first, it sounds like a typical too-good-to-be-true story. A budget car dressed up to look expensive, but the moment you look closer, things start to feel different. The design doesn't scream compromise, the interior doesn't feel stripped down, and the technologies, especially the hybrid system, doesn't look like a shortcut. Which makes the real question even more uncomfortable. What if this isn't a cheap car pretending to be premium, but a premium strategy disguised as cheap? Because right now, the global car industry is stuck in a very clear split. On one side, you have Tesla, pushing the limits of electric technology, building an ecosystem that still feels years ahead. But there's a catch. Most people simply can't afford it. On the other side, Toyota has taken a safer route, perfecting hybrids, focusing on reliability, playing the long game. But sometimes, safe also means slow. And between these two extremes, something has been missing. Until now. And this is where things start to get interesting. Because Chery didn't suddenly appear out of nowhere. For years, it was quietly building something most people never noticed. While big brands fought over the US and Europe, Chery went somewhere else. Markets where buyers care less about brand names and more about value. Latin America, Africa, the Middle East. Places where price matters, but so does practicality. And slowly, without making noise, that strategy started working. Today, Chery is selling millions of cars every year. Not in one country, but across more than 80, and that changes everything. Because once a company reaches that level of scale, it stops thinking like a small player and starts moving like a system that can experiment, a system that can take risks, a system that can do something others can't afford to try. Now here's where the story starts to get uncomfortable. Because the full-win X3L isn't just another product, it's a signal. The kind of signal that forces competitors to look at themselves and ask questions they've been avoiding. The moment you see the car, it doesn't match the price. Sharp LED lights, bold stance. Clean lines, it looks like something from a much higher segment. Step inside, and it gets even more confusing. Dual screens. Minimalist dashboard. Soft touch materials. The kind of setup buyers usually associate with cars, twice the price dot. So where's the compromise? That's the part no one fully understands at first. Because the real story isn't in what you see, it's in how it works. Under the surface, the X3L runs on a plug-in hybrid system, and on paper, that might not sound revolutionary, but the way it's positioned changes everything. In city driving, it behaves like a full electric car, silent, smooth, almost effortless. No fuel, no noise, just motion. But the moment you push it further long drives, highways, the petrol engine steps in. Not as a backup, but as a partner. Supporting, balancing, extending range, which means something most drivers secretly want, but rarely get: freedom without commitment. You don't have to fully trust charging networks. You don't have to worry about running out of battery in the middle of nowhere. And at the same time, you still get a taste of electric driving. It's not a compromise between two worlds, it's a bridge. And that bridge might be exactly what millions of buyers have been waiting for. But this only matters once you see what's really happening behind the price. Because cars don't just become cheap overnight, especially not like this. And this is where most people misunderstand the situation. They assume corners are being cut, that something important must be missing. But the truth is, the cost isn't being cut randomly, it's being engineered. China's manufacturing ecosystem is built differently. Massive production volumes, localized supply chains, batteries, chips, motors, everything produced within reach. No expensive imports, no long delays. Add government support on top of that, and suddenly, the economics shift. What looks impossible from the outside, it becomes completely logical from the inside, and Chery is using that advantage in a very specific way. Instead of chasing high profit per car, it's chasing scale. Sell more units, enter more markets. Build presence, first, profit later. It's not just about selling a vehicle. It's about positioning itself globally before others can react. And pricing like this, that's not a discount. That's a weapon. Which brings us to the part most big brands won't say out loud if this works. It changes the rules. Because suddenly, buyers start asking different questions. Why pay more for similar features? Why accept slower innovation? Why stay loyal to a brand if another offers more for less? And that's where the pressure begins. Tesla might need to rethink affordability. Toyota might need to move faster. Not because they want to, but because they have to. And in markets where every dollar matters, this becomes even more powerful. Imagine a first-time buyer, someone who has never owned a modern SUV before. Suddenly, they have access to something that looks premium, feels advanced, and doesn't break their budget. For them, this isn't just a car, it's an upgrade in lifestyle. A shift in what feels possible. But here's the part. No one should ignore this isn't a guaranteed win. Because behind every opportunity like this, there's always a question waiting. Brand trust. Long-term reliability. What happens after 5 years? What about resale value? Established companies earned their reputation over decades. Chery is still building that story. And for some buyers, that uncertainty will matter more than the price. So now the decision becomes something. Deeper than just choosing a car, it becomes a choice between certainty and possibility. And maybe that's why this moment feels bigger than it looks. Because this isn't just about one SUV, it's about a shift in how value is defined. A shift in who gets access to technology. A shift in what people expect when they spend their money. The real question isn't whether this car will succeed, it's what happens if it does. Because if a $16,500 hybrid SUV can truly deliver on its promise, then everything we thought we knew about pricing, brands, and the future of cars might need to be rewritten, and not everyone is ready for that. And the moment you start thinking about that seriously, another question appears. What if this isn't the final version of the strategy, but just the beginning? Because historically, this is how disruption actually works. It doesn't start at the top. It doesn't try to beat the best products overnight. It starts where most companies aren't paying attention. Lower price segments, first-time buyers, emerging markets. And then, slowly, it moves up, improving, refining, expanding, until one day, it's no longer the cheap alternative. It's the default choice. That's exactly how brands in other industries have taken over before anyone realized what was happening. And if you look closely, Chery seems to be following that exact path. Right now, the full One X3L is positioned as a value-for-money SUV. Something practical, something accessible. But the real play might not be about this model alone. It might be about what comes next. Because once a company builds trust at scale, once millions of people start using its cars daily, the perception begins to shift. Slowly at first, then all at once, and this is where things could get even more uncomfortable for competitors. Because companies like Tesla didn't just build cars, they built an ecosystem. Software updates, charging networks, data-driven improvements. That's what makes them hard to compete with. But what if a company like Chery decides to move in that direction too? While keeping prices low, now you're not just competing on technology, you're competing on accessibility. And accessibility scales faster than innovation alone. At the same time, Toyota has built its entire reputation on reliability. Decades of trust, proven systems, cars that last. But even that advantage starts to feel different when a new player offers good enough reliability at a significantly lower price. Because for many buyers, especially in growing markets, good enough isn't a compromise, it's the smartest decision. So the battlefield starts to shift, not from best versus best, but from best versus smartest. And here's where the story takes another turn that most people miss. Because while everyone is focused on the car itself, the features, the design, the price, very few are looking at the long-term behavior this could create. If more buyers start choosing affordable hybrid solutions over expensive EVs, it could slow down full EV adoption in certain regions. Not because EVs aren't better, but because hybrids become good enough for now, and that creates a ripple effect. Charging infrastructure investments might slow in some areas. Governments might adjust policies. Consumers might delay fully switching to electric. All because a middle option suddenly became too attractive to ignore. So, ironically, A hybrid SUV could end up reshaping the future of electric cars. And this is where the story stops being simple. Because now, it's no longer just about whether the Volkswagen X3L is a good car. It's about timing. Right product, right price. Right moment. But timing can work both ways.